Greetings and welcome to my podcast, Why So Political? I'm your host, Neha Yadavalli, a high schooler from the US. Regardless of your views, I hope you enjoy this episode of Why So Political. Before I begin, I would like to make the audience aware of an informative project I, along with some of my peers from school, have completed. I, along with 3 other individuals, whom I will not be disclosing their identities, have completed a website all about the challenges and struggles women have been and are subjugated to in society, such as threats towards women's healthcare, the wage gap, global issues involving women, and violence towards women. The website is called Better World for Women, and I will make sure to link it in this episode's description. I, along with my peers, would greatly appreciate it if you were to check out our site. Thank you. Critical race theory has recently been brought into the limelight. What with the recent events that have unfolded that only prove systemic racism still exists, critical race theory is definitely very relevant to this day. What exactly is critical race theory? Critical race theory is a framework of analysis grounded in critical theory, and an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists who seek to examine the intersection of race and law in the United States, and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. Essentially, critical race theory states that U.S. social institutions are laced with racism embedded in laws, regulations, rules, and procedures that lead to differential outcomes by race. Now, this subject may seem simple enough, right? I mean, really, it's history. And like proven, history repeats itself if we don't educate ourselves about past events. However, this subject seems to be increasingly controversial in schools, making for an interesting political climate. Those who are against teaching critical race theory fear that CRT admonishes all white people for being oppressors while classifying all Black people as hopelessly oppressed victims. I truly feel that the Time newspaper perfectly encapsulates the truth behind those who oppose CRT. They state that, quote, a paradox lies at this largely conservative campaign against critical race theory. If you slice through the rhetoric, it rests on a view of free speech that the political right, until now, stridently and correctly rejected. That speech can and should be curtailed because it makes some people feel uncomfortable or threatened. Now, in terms of my personal experience, I really don't see how CRT is harmful or too much to handle. For some context, in my history class, we were shown the real footage of John F. Kennedy getting assassinated and shot. If anything's too much to handle, I truly feel like that would fit the description. In essence, there are many reasons, why people, typically right-leaning, oppose CRT. There are also many reasons why CRT is seen as useful in the eyes of others. For example, it sheds important light on the racial inequalities that exist today and why they exist. Furthermore, according to Education Post, CRT aspires to empower voices that have been marginalized. Embracing the lived experiences of people of color through research, storytelling, and counter-storytelling placed in historical, social, and political context is critical to scholarship that examines race and racism in today's society. I'm sure it's not an unknown fact that there have been quite a few attacks on critical race theory recently. Now, for the sake of time purposes, I won't get into all of them. However, there is one recent attack that happened close to home that I would like to highlight. One specific example that really resonated with me for some reason. I recently read an article the other day, and I'm sure it was from Newsweek, about a conservative group of women based in New Hampshire. Now, these women, they go by the names of Moms of Liberty, and they recently acquired a lot of attention for one of their tweets. Now, these women tweeted, and I quote, "We've got $500 for the person that first successfully catches a public school teacher breaking this law." And the law that they're referring to is teaching CRT in schools. Now, I'd like to make it known that CRT is typically taught in classes, but in classes in college. However, the subject definitely is relevant in a middle school and in high school setting. For example, last year, my school covered a lot of civil rights, and CRT would definitely fit in with what we were covering. Back to the example, in a follow-up tweet, the Moms of Liberty referred to donations as CRT bounties, referring to the concept of critical race theory. To summarize, they alluded to the fact that bounties can be placed on teachers who are teaching CRT in a classroom setting. Now, this reminds me a lot of the bounties that are, being placed on people who aid in abortions in Texas, and it really doesn't sit right with me. Now, while these are not the only attacks, they stuck out to me more so than others. And these attacks really beg the question, and we all need to ask ourselves this question. Do we truly want to live in a world where teaching history becomes a crime? That concludes this episode of Why So Political. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my take. I truly appreciate your time. If you like what you heard, I would highly encourage you to come back next week. A new episode drops every Monday at 8. And I would also invite you to check out the website me and my peers created. It will be linked in the description of this episode. Have a good one.